Rise, shine, give God the glory, glory, rise, shine, give God the glory, glory, rise, shine, give God the glory, glory, children of the Lord. That's what my mama used to sing every morning, getting up her 6 children for school. Rise, it's time to go to school. But the song really goes, rise, shine, give God the glory, glory, rise, shine, give God the glory, glory, rise, shine, give God the glory, glory, soldiers of the Lord. Why? Because he chose you and he chose me to rise. On this day, we will never, ever, ever see again. Therefore, we should give him the honor, the praise, the glory, the hallelujah, the worship, and most importantly, the acknowledgement. Not that he needs it, but he would sure appreciate it. When we first acknowledge him in all things and apply spiritual principles to this earthly journey, we will be glad to rise because we have another day to be of service to him and to our fellow human beings. So now I can introduce myself. I am Edwina B., known as Miss Cuckoo for Cocoa Pops, and I love it. Why? Because of my transparency and authenticity. The journey it took 33 plus years ago to be sitting here before you, most times with the wig and a face full of makeup, and of course my dentures. But when the spirit hits me and want me to let you know that it's not about the messenger, it's about the spiritual message, and I snatch off that wig right on TV. I wipe off that makeup right on TV, and I take out these dentures right on TV. Yes, I do. Then I say, well, how you like me now? Right? And so that's why I am known as Miss Cuckoo for Cocoa Pops, and I love it. Why? Because my creator, who I didn't know personally 33 plus years ago, met me, delivered me, and prepared me from underneath a parked car. Yes, that's where my journey to transparency and authenticity began. Why? Because I had a 14-year addiction, and the last night I got high was the early morning of September the 22nd of 1990. I was getting high with my own stepson. Him and I were both 34 years of age in our severe addiction and obviously with a mental illness. So, as we were getting high and I was doing all kind of sexual favors for him, when it was all said and done and everything was gone, he wanted to harm me because under the influence, we transform. So he transformed into a violent person. I transformed into a person who feared for her life. And after he threw the first punch, I jumped out the car, started running, got a flashback from my past of playing hide and seek. If I just get underneath the bed, they can't find me, they can't hurt me. Well, as I continued to run, I saw a slew of cars in Mount Airy, Philadelphia, y'all, 3 o'clock in the morning. I said, if I just get underneath one of those cars, he can't hurt me. And I put myself underneath one of those cars. I only weighed 90 pounds, face all sunken in, dark circles around my eyes, hair all short and matted. I only had a few teeth at that time, and I fit underneath that parked car. Yes. And if you see my book as it was written, which is the 4 year of journal entries that I kept in early recovery as suggested by my sponsor, you will see the picture was recreated with me underneath that parked car and my hand extended out. And the background was my eyes full of tears. And on the other side was the row of crack houses, brothel, the strip. And at the bottom, it says 4 year journal entry. I suffered from alcoholism, drug addiction, mental illness. I committed crime. I was a prostitute. I even committed murder. Yes, At the age of 23, I got pregnant and didn't want to face the world with their judgment or criticism. Therefore, I made the choice that I said I would never ever do of having an abortion. I consider that murder. From that point on, I said, whatever happens to me, happens to me. I was also homeless. So the flashbacks while underneath that parked car continue. Edwina, how at the age of 34 you are underneath a parked car? You were the class vice president, co-captain of the cheerleader team. You had ambitions of being a model, an actress, and a phys ed teacher. Voted 1-2 most likely to succeed. Deemed the smartest of your parents' 6 kids. Why are you underneath a parked car with your face literally on the ground? Dogs and cats get underneath a parked car. Edwina, what is wrong with you? My children at the time admired and respected me for my accomplishments, and the flashbacks continued because, as I said, having that abortion, me committing murder, my life went on a down spiral that was just totally out of control. And so I have been raped several times, passed around like a bucket, spit on, called all kinds of names. Homeboys would say, bitch, do me and do my boys too. You know what I mean. And if you don't do it right, we're going to sick these dogs on you. You are either going to yield or you're going to die. I yield. I jumped in and out of cars to turn tricks. I did not take care of my personal hygiene. I caught several STDs. One turned into cervical cancer. I broke into my children's house, my sister's house. I fell off a roof trying to get salvation. I've been roaming the streets for a number of years. Married a John who, God bless him to bless me, who took me over the threshold from active addiction into recovery. So you see, when I talk about the journey to transparency and authenticity, I have to tell the truth. Because if I did not tell the truth along the way, I would not be able to sit here and let you know that I'm free, which is the name of my company, Free to Hope. From recovery, emerge enlightened. From recovery, emerge empowered to give hope to others, help others prosper equally. So, my journey to authenticity and transparency was modeled after a young lady that came to a rehab that I was in, and how she shared what she shared, how she felt when she did what she did just blew my mind. And not only did she share the pain, but she also shared her purpose of sitting in front of us to give us hope. And so as a result, I say, God, whoever, if you keep me sober long enough, I want to be able to share just like her. But while underneath that parked car, let me tell you how the transparency to the identifying the God of my understanding, while all those flashbacks flash before my mind, somewhere deep, 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 deep inside of me came these words: whoever they say you are, whoever they say you are, I don't know you. I heard you as a punishing God. I don't know you personally, but whoever they say you are, take me out this life now or show me a better way. I can't live one more second of this vicious cycle. And this is after trying to commit suicide several times. Voila, he obviously chose me. And I believe we are chosen to be prepared to give what I am giving to you now, the authenticity and the transparency that is needed to be set spiritually free. Donald Lawrence says we are not a natural being having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings walking and encased in this natural journey here on earth called life. And so when we apply, after we've learned, embraced, evaluated, analyzed, dissected the spiritual principles, we can apply them to all earthly matters. And so that's what I've been doing for 33 plus years. So February the 23rd of 2023, we did celebrate 33 years, which is why I want to invite you to my free virtual presentation on April the 20th and or April the 27th, just to share with you how the journey of transparency and authenticity was built. It's an orientation, right? And I'm sharing with you how to build that foundation of continued transparency and authenticity. Why? Because the mask must go. Underneath that parked car, I didn't have any mask, right? And so when I do come on, like I said in my previous podcast, when I do live events, when I do my seminars and I do my workshops and I'm the keynote speaker, guess what? I may come out looking like this, right? And I may have a wig on and all that kind of stuff, but guess what? Sometime during that presentation, I snatch it all off. I even take out my dentures. I put them back in just to be able to pronunciate and articulate, but I want you to feel my spirit, not look at my physical, right? And so when you get past the physical, you can open up your spiritual ears, your spiritual eyes, and grasp the spiritual message, okay? So you have to email me at edwina.bell@yahoo.com, edwina.bell, ding, 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 @yahoo.com, so that you can register and I can send you the link. When you send me an email, subject free, free, free. Just one time, but the word free. This way I know that you're not a hacker or a spam person. So edwina.bell@yahoo.com. Okay. Now, the next thing I want to bring to your attention as a result of being in this process for over 33 plus years, I have been prepared as a transformational speaker, a spiritual consultant, or coach, sharing with you my experience, my strength, my hope, my wisdom, and my perspective of utilizing and practicing the 12 spiritual principles that I am still a part of Alcoholics Anonymous. And a few months ago, I incorporated the 5 agreements by the Ruiz family. Be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions. Always do your best. And 5, be skeptical, but learn to listen. And most recently, I've been attending the spiritual workshops. I call them spiritual because that's what they are, and that it is in a transformational format with Dr. Sonja of P3 University. When I say that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, I was ready on February the 22nd of 1990, and the teacher did appear. I was led on a spiritual path, and as that continued, right, the spiritual student was ready and the spiritual teachers appeared. And so now, incorporating all 3 of those spiritual tools, instrument, knowledge, wisdom, I'm on fire. I don't represent any of them, but I do represent the God who chose me, met me, delivered me, and prepared me from underneath that poor car. Yes. And you will see on my book the before, during, and after. Because now I am obtaining my doctorate in biblical studies, not to preach, although they was calling me a pastor all this past weekend, right? But I wanted to learn more about the God who did for me what no other human being could do. Right? So that's my dissertation. That's going to be on 15 to 20 instruments known as people to share their experience, strength, hope, wisdom on how the 12 spiritual principles of a 12 step program help them to identify the God of their understanding. Whether they were atheists, agnostics, believers, used to be believers, non believers, guess what? The 12 spiritual principles helped all of them to identify a higher power and to call that higher power anything that they wanted as long as it was loving and caring. And we know that the Creator is all that and nothing else, full of love. Unconditional love is that. I received my master's degree from Lincoln University in 1997 in human services. I specialized in writing a employee assistance program, a representative manual, where we were able to interview several employees to become peer specialists or EAP reps to help those other workers who had co-occurring disorders get the help they need instead of losing their job. I also have a TV talk show for the past 32 years on the community cable network in Wilmington, Delaware, Newcastle, Delaware, entitled Choosing a New Way of Life, right? I'm also have been around the world sharing my experience, my strength, my hope, my wisdom, and my perspective on how this person with current occurring disorders was able to be set free. From recovery, I did emerge enlightened and therefore empowered to give hope to others. I'm also a runway full size model because I wanted to be a model as a little girl, but it was diminished because they said I was too short. I had buck teeth at the time, had a big butt, and so. But God said, you're going to be a model, but I need you to be my model first, and then I give you the desires of your heart. I'm also an actress. Yes, I'm in a Motown play with Prophetess Sandy, and I've worked with Rick Watson on several plays with two of the guys from the Heartbeat. Yes, remember that? Remember that movie, The Five Heartbeats? Who would have known that I would be prepared, but God, to participate in all of these platforms basically centered around addiction and recovery from co occurring disorders. You see, nothing in God's world goes to waste. It all works for good for those who love Him and are willing to be guided by Him. And so that's just a little bit of information that I want to share with you. And so if you are in need of a keynote speaker or a speaker in a transformational form, a spiritual coach or a spiritual consultant, one in the corporate world for employee assistance program, or in the field of co-occurring disorders. I'm equipped to do both because it's all related to being set free from these devastating disorders. Okay? All right, so now is it time for us to get to the topic? Yes. However, I do have one more thing to report to you. This past week, last 4 days, I have been joined with 300 plus women at Dr. Sonja Business Mastery Blueprint for coaches, speakers, and thought leaders. I can't begin to tell you what a transformational spiritual journey these 4 days have given me. When you have someone like Dr. Sonja who gives from her heart, who is so transparent and so authentic, who is willing to share how she turned her pain into purpose, no, her pain to achieve her passion that gave her her purpose, and she is spiritually obtaining profits. Why? To continue to inspire and help women transform from any and all adversities experienced in their life. Everybody has a story. And the way she helps us to write our book, keep a journal, build our business, touch those who need touching in a specific area, she gives us the blueprint. And so being around and supported by women, a couple members there too, of all ages, all races, all culture, ethnicities, right? I was like amazed once again, which is why come Monday morning, I'm implementing everything she has told us to do. I would say suggested, just like the 12 steps are only suggestions. They say, if you plan on jumping out of a plane, we suggest you put on a parachute. And so Dr. Sonia said, well, if you really want to build your business, we suggest you get to stepping, okay? And so I just want to thank Dr. Sonia and her staff for welcoming and embracing and nurturing the women and a couple of men on how to build. It says, she says, if you didn't come from a wealthy family, let a wealthy family come from you. And so my 33 plus years of experience and the media and as an author, as a transformational speaker in the corporate world, I will do what was suggested. All right. So I just want to thank Dr. Sonia. Definitely want to thank the Ruiz family, and definitely the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous spiritual principles. And y'all need to know I made my meeting every day. 1 hour, I made my spiritual appointment, saw my spiritual doctor. I'm on my spiritual fellowship, even if it was just on the phone. I got to share and I got to listen so that we can continue to help one another. All right. So that's an update. All right, so let's get started. All right, so I will be sharing with you, right, the daily reflections. Now, this is one of Alcoholics Anonymous literature, and it was written by our co-founders, and it's a daily reflections that gives us things to think about, to meditate on, to practice, and it is in a month to month format. And so we know that we have 12 spiritual principles and traditions and concepts, right? And so each month, it focuses on the 12 steps, the 12 traditions, which will help us to continue the transformation, right? Individually, and also to obtain the transformation in a group setting to help one another. And so day by day, we read in some of our open meetings, which is open to the public, or closed meetings for alcoholics only, right? And we get to share that topic and we discuss it, evaluate it, meditate on it, and most importantly, we practice it. All right. So today's topic is, right, anger, a dubious luxury. But because on Sundays I'm with you for an hour, I like to do a review. So if you don't mind, I would like to uh, bring up. Let me move this out the way before I get into the reading for today. I want to be able to review what we went over this week. Okay, so let's go here. Okay, so on Monday we talked about growing up. And growing up it was basically sharing with us how in recovery we come in devastated, humiliated, feeling less than, with guilt, shame, remorse of how we got to the state that we were in. And due to the 12 steps, we found out that we had a illness, we had a sickness, and we were sick people trying to get well. And so the illusion that something was wrong with us was dismantled because we found out what happened to us. And so when we come to Alcoholics Anonymous and apply these 12 spiritual principles, we go back in our history through our inventory to find out where those attitudes, ideas, behaviors, belief systems were first formulated. And the Ruiz family calls that process domestication. And so when we come into Alcoholics Anonymous, we are basically growing up again, going back to unlearn what we learned in order to learn spiritual information and knowledge and wisdom as we continue our journey to transparency and authenticity. Okay, and on the 11th, we talked about a word to drop, which is blame. How many of you, like me, pointed a finger at the world, people, situations, things, but never concentrated on the three fingers plus the thumb pointing back at you? And so one of the things that alcoholics are very good at doing, and anybody who really has an addiction, and I believe we are all addicted to something, is that when things don't go our way, when things don't happen the way we want them to, when people don't do what we say, we want to blame everything and everybody instead of blaming ourselves. So we learn in the 12-step spiritual program that we must drop the word blame from our thought and our mouths. Okay? On April the 12th, we talked about giving up insanity. Now, most people would think that people with our disorders of mental illness and chemical dependency, that we are crazy people. And for a while, people thought that, and some of us even believe that. There are times when, I thought, what is wrong with me? I must be crazy. I didn't use the word insane. I would say I'm crazy. But going through this spiritual program, we learned that we are not crazy people, and we did some insane things, right? And so, giving up insanity, in the second step, it says, right, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And sanity only means, right, soundness of mind. And so the 12 spiritual principles says we must give up doing insane things and be restored to soundness of mind. On the 13th, right, the topic was the false comfort of self pity. Now, many of you, like me, know what that means, right? Feeling sorry for ourselves, blaming everybody for what is going on, sitting on that pity pot. But after a while, either you need the SHIT or get off the pot. So you know what I mean, right? And so we talked about the false comfort of self pity, because when you think about we who have the disease of alcoholism and mental illness, we can blame the world. We can do some insane things. We don't want to grow up, and therefore we're on this self-pity crusade. And we learn in Alcoholics Anonymous that it's false. It's a false comfort that we must be freed from. Okay. And then on the 14th, we talked about the number one offender, and it was resentment, right? How many of you, I had to spend a few minutes on this, right? How many of you can attest to having resentments, past, present, that you even want to hold on for the future, right? And so, if you know what resentments are and what they do to our mind, body, soul, and spirit, then we must be rid of them. And for those in recovery, we know that resentments is the number one offender that we must get rid of, right? And by doing that four-step inventory, applying the 5 agreements, and some situations, transformational teachings by Dr. Sonja, that we see how useless it is to have resentments, because we can never be set free, nor will we allow the sunlight to come in to help us to grow. And that's what we talked about. on the, let's go back here, on the 14th. And yesterday we talked about the bondage of resentment. And if you know how resentments are started, and resentments is one of our character defects. And let me tell you what character defects are. They are nothing more than our God given instincts that have far exceeded their intended purpose. So in recovery, we learn by living in this world, as the Ruiz family describes, we are really living in hell right now. But we can also live and bring heaven while we are here on this earthly journey by applying spiritual principles to all these earthly matters. And so when we talked about the bondage of resentment, we realized that we were caged in because we wanted to hold on to things that we should have let go a long, long time ago. But guess what? It's not too late. It's not too late. And so that's why being a part of a 12-step spiritual program, whether it's for Lust Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, Gambling Anonymous, Work Anonymous, Love Anonymous, they all use the same 12 spiritual principles. And it says in our literature, all human beings are ill to some extent. My friend Miguel Pozo, he uses the platform of 12 spiritual principles of life. And I even saw in Dr. Sonja book, she used 12 spiritual principles. See, there's help available. There is a solution that is available, but we have to be willing to, number one, be honest, be transparent, be authentic, right? Open minded, and again, willing to learn that we need to unlearn some things in order to learn new things that's spiritual in nature. All right. So that was a review of this week's topics. Okay. So now let's go to the topic of today. All right. So let me put this in and let me go here. All right. All right. Okay. So the topic is, right, anger, a dubious luxury. Our co founder states from the AA Big Book off of page 66. Now, I really want you to open up your spiritual ears and your spiritual eyes and get this spiritual message. It states, if we were to live, we had to be free of anger. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. They may be the dubious luxury of normal men, but for alcoholics, these things are poison. AA Big Book, page 66. And the person in recovery shares his perspective. Dubious luxury? How often have I remembered those words? It's not just anger that's best left to non alcoholics. I built a list including justifiable resentments, self pity, judgmentalism, self righteousness, false pride, and false humility. I'm always surprised to read the actual quote. So well have the principles of the program been drummed into me that I keep thinking all of these defects are listed too. Thank God I can afford them, or I surely would indulge in them. Hmm? Hmm? Did you like that? Did you like that? Huh? Did you like that? Right? So when you talk about anger, Hmm. Anger? A dubious luxury? What do you think about that? What do you think about that? Let's go back into your history where you first saw anger and how it would manifest. Go back in your history to find out when you first had anger and how it manifested in your behavior. Mhm. And as you go back and review your history, your pattern, of anger and the consequences? What do you think? Whether it was formed from jealousy, resentment, right? loss of this, loss of that. You didn't get what you wanted, da 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 da, and you became angry. But what did it get you? Mm, you wanted revenge. You wanted to get back. And guess what? When I teach anger management, the first thing I do is I put a D in front of it with neon lights. Bing, bing, danger, danger, danger. And so in a 12-step program, we recognize that anger, right? A dubious luxury that we cannot afford. All right, so let's go back to the reading and let's dissect this baby, right? So it says here, if we were to live, we had to be free of anger. Do you know? Do you know why we had to be free of anger? You know why we had to be free of anger? Why? Because guess what? It could lead us back to drinking. And so we don't want to go back to drinking because when we drank, we landed up in jail, we landed in handcuffs, and some of us landed dead. And so we basically can't afford anger. And so it says here the grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. They may be dubious luxuries of normal men, but for alcoholics, these things are poison. And so when you think about anger, self pity, resentment, all those things can lead us back to drinking and ultimately back to that lifestyle. And for me, hell to the no. We learn not to give anything or anybody that much power ever again to make us go back to drinking. And for me, underneath that parked car. So I apply these 12 spiritual principles to all earthly matters so that I recognize what I need to stay away from based on my pattern, based on my triggers, based on my inventory. And so I was able to learn how to apply these spiritual principles to these earthly matters. Okay. Now, if you hear anything in the background, I'm in the hotel lobby and they are transitioning. So let's continue to go. Okay. All right. So let me see. Okay. Okay. Let me see if I can continue. All right. So then the next thing we want to do is go back to the person in recovery and what he writes. He says, dubious luxury. How often have I remembered those words? It's not just anger that's best left to non alcoholics. I built a list, okay? And so when you come into recovery, you will do an inventory and you will find out what has prevented you from doing and being a productive member of society, of being the best person that you can be, and how those things led you ultimately to go back to drinking, to harm yourself, and to harm people. And so one of the things that we learn in recovery is, when we do that inventory, we list all those character defects that have uh, put some stains on our character. And so the whole process of recovery is to build character and identifying these defects. So he listed some of them that we've been talking about: justifiable resentments, self pity, judgmentalism, self righteousness, false pride, and false humility. And so we one of the things that we realize is that if we are able to identify these character defects, evaluate them, how, what, when, and where they were first formulated, how and what we allowed ourselves to give power to make us go back to drinking and that lifestyle. And so, one of the things that I'm finding out is that when he says, listing these things, and that's the beautiful thing about recovery. It's like a book, right? And everybody has a story. And so one of the things that one of the things I was trying to wave them to be quiet a little bit, but I'm powerless over that, right? So we all have a book. And so when we have a book, we have a story. And the first half of our life has been already recorded, right? We just haven't seen it in writing. And the 4-step inventory helps us to do that. And so when we go back in our history, we found out again where those attitudes, ideas, behaviors, belief systems were first formulated, by whom, what situations, what circumstances, and guess what? One of the most important factors is what part do we play in it. So, because we are all human beings, our character defects clash. And so that's where a lot of chaos comes about, because one is trying to be bigger, one is trying to dominate the other, one is passive, one is aggressive, and the whole 9 yards. And so when we get into this spiritual recovery of these 12 spiritual principles, we see how we need to stay away. Danger, 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 right? Whether it be self-pity, whether it be resentments, whether it be anger, whether it be lust, all those things, character defects can lead us back to drinking. And so one of the things that I want to emphasize too, he says here, right? You can also, right, be judgmental. And so one of the agreements by the Ruiz family, it says here, first of all, be impeccable with your word. So when we come into recovery, we are filled with guilt, remorse, all of that, and we think and we say bad things to ourselves and we believe them, right? Because we did those things, right? And so first we acknowledge it and we have awareness that this is what we're doing. And so when we learn spiritual principles, we learn to embrace them, to internalize them, so that they can begin to discard all of those negative things that we say to ourselves and now replace them with, I can, I will, I want, right? So be impeccable with your word. That means don't sin against yourself. And when you do that, you're most likely to not sin against other people. And then the second agreement, it says don't take anything personally, right? And so how many of us as human beings, that's all we do? You hurt my feelings, you said this, you said that, oh, I took that the wrong way, the right way. Guess what? When we take things personally, it is that person's opinion. And so we have been domesticated, right, to take on other people's stuff when it's really not our stuff, right? And so we also learn how what we say impact and affect other people too. So it works both ways. And then the third agreement, it says don't make any assumptions. So when you think about how many assumptions all of us make all day long, I can't. I might as well try. Oh, he did that. Right? Don't even know the answer. Don't even know the situation. And someone asked me one day, Edwina, since you miss know it all, if you was missing a piece of the puzzle or a part of the information, is there a possibility you could be wrong? And the answer is you damn right. So, when we make assumptions, it makes a behind out of you and me. And so I've learned through my journey to transparency and authenticity, to ask questions, not to make assumptions. And so, in our recovery, it says we try to understand than to be understood, right? And so the fourth agreement, it says basically always do your best. So if I'm impeccable with my word, I don't take anything personally, I don't make any assumptions, I will always do my best. And the same thing that the 12 spiritual principles say. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And now, with the fifth agreement, it says, be skeptical, right? But learn to listen. Learn to listen to the negativity you're sharing to yourself about yourself. Learn about the negativity that you are sharing and putting on other people, right? And what people are saying. Okay, you hear them, you hear yourself, but be skeptical. Learn to listen. Go beyond the physical. What are they really saying? What am I really saying, right? And so you have to be skeptical because we have been domesticated for so long and it's built on a bunch of lies, right? And lies that we have told ourselves and believe, and other people have done the same thing. So that's why I love the fact of, sharing what the five agreements, how they complement the 12 spiritual principles. So then he says here, right? Self-righteousness, right? Self-righteousness, right? And guess what? Everybody to some extent is self-righteous. They believe it's just human nature. They are right about everything. I'm right about everything. But guess what? It's over a billion human beings in this world, and guess what? It's their truth, it's your truth, and it's the truth, right? And so that self-righteousness can put us in a state of fantasy. It's not realistic, right? And so no, as I continue to become transparent and authentic, that means I continue to be open to information that's spiritual in nature. I'm able to decipher it. I'm able to put it in its correct perspective. That's why in recovery we say there's nothing wrong with you. You just need to find out what happened to you and also apply that to your present situation. If I do not go inside and remove the mask of things that I've been trying to conceal all my life, that needs to be revealed in order for me to heal. And so here we have help. And when we all have that knee bowing experience, if you haven't had it yet, you will. And you confess with your tongue that he is. Whether you're an atheist, agnostic, believer, doesn't matter. The Creator says, I am. And it will take our humanness, our journey on this earthly matter to realize, guess what? All those negative spirits occupied this same body. And manifested itself in us destroying our own selves, right? And other people, right? And then it talks about here, right? It says false pride, false pride, false pride. Y'all know what pride is, right? False pride. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I saw Dr. Sonja. She was in that boxing mode. And guess what? I'm from North Philly. I can box too, right? False pride, thinking I'm Joe Frazier, Muhammad Ali. Uh huh. Yeah. Yeah. Really? Mm-hmm. Huh? What is uh, sting like a bee? Something, you know what I mean, right? But it's false pride. No, that's why it's so important, y'all, to come to my orientation on the journey to transparency and authenticity. We can eliminate once we become aware of the false pride. No, no. They say pride leads to procession. Are you kidding me? Why? Because we are so fearful of what other people might say. And guess what? It's their own opinion. They have not lived our lives. They live their lives. And therefore, that's where they are coming from. When we do the same thing to others, right? This is our lives and that's their lives. I need to mind my own business, right? And so that self pride will definitely be talked about during this orientation, all right? And then, it says here, right? The next thing it said was false humility, right? False humility. Could you imagine, right? and and it's just human nature. Could you imagine thinking you're being humble, but you have an ulterior motive? You think you're being humble, but you're trying to get somebody back. You think you're being humble, right? And you have no humility in your spirit whatsoever. So we have to be mindful within ourselves. Once we acknowledge it in ourselves, we can identify it in other people. False humility, mm-mm. Underneath that part card was true humility through humiliation. And that's what's going to happen, right? We will gain humility majority of the time through being humiliated, which is divinely orchestrated. So if not, why would I need to call on a God or a creator, right? And so when we get down to our right size and we know that we are not the great I am, that there is a force that created everything, yes, that's our knee bowing experience when we call out, help me, help me, help me. Then we have true humility. All right. So let's continue on. It says here, right? I'm always surprised to read the actual quote. So well have the principles of the program been drummed into me that I keep thinking all of these defects are listed too. right? And so this is the beauty of being in recovery that's spiritual in nature. You gain awareness, you gain an understanding, you gain some information, some knowledge, some wisdom. You will gain spiritual experiences, spiritual awakening, spiritual transformation that will help you to obtain a psychic change in your thinking. Oh my God, y'all, listen. I'll say it. I'm so glad that of all the diseases that I've had and could have, I'm so glad that I have had the disease of alcoholism and mental illness. Yep. Because it is what it is. I had what I had. I am who I am. Right? And that's the acceptance part. It's like, and what, so what, now what? What are you going to do about it? And what's the next right thing to do about it? But I go even further. What's the next right spiritual thing to do about it? Ask for help. Be honest, be open minded, and be willing to utilize it and apply it because it works. Okay. All right. So let's see. I got about 9 more minutes. Okay. Because I told you on Sundays I do an hour. Okay. So then he says, "Thank God I can afford them, or I surely will indulge in them." All right. Now, I'm transparent. I'm authentic. Right. So I'm here in Atlanta, and for the conference with Dr. Sonja, and I'm in my room by myself, and Atlanta is full of this and full of that, but I recognize I'm here for a reason and a purpose, right? And I thank God that I have grown spiritually to the point where I know what I'm thinking, and I know what I want to do. I know what I ain't gonna do because I'm aware now of those character defects that could not make me go back to drinking again, oh hell to the no. But what it can do and what they can do is take me off my spiritual walk. And it does happen. Listen, we're not perfect, but we have to be satisfied with progress, right? And so, listen, but when y'all join me on April the 20th and or the 27th, I'm gonna share some things with y'all. But let me share with you right now that being here, I found this restaurant and I smelled the aroma right outside, and I walked in, and then I laid eyes on this man, and I was just watching the way he's a cook and he's a chef. The way he was doing this and doing that and doing this and doing that, I was just sitting there like watching him, right? And I began to marvel at his gift, at his craft, right? And then it went from that to, he's kind of cute. Mm-mm, Then I start fantasizing. See what I mean? See what I mean about being aware, right? Now, listen, I've been alone for a few years and been celibate for a few years. And guess what? That's just the way it is. And I'm okay with that. But it didn't, and it don't stop the thoughts, right? And the feelings I get. But I have to learn to put them in this right perspective, right? Because I'm now aware. I know, right? And so yeah, I start flirting. How about that? I start flirting. And I'm just looking at this guy, and he sees me looking at him, and how what goes on, right? Oh, you give me attention, da, 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 da. And so I said, well, you know what? I'll be back tomorrow because I love the way you made this steak, and I did. And then I found out that they had other things on the menu, and I said, I'll be back tomorrow. He was like, okay. And I came back the next day and sitting in the same seat and still doing the same thing, right? But I need to say, how those thoughts can linger on. And when I don't apply spiritual principles, I choose not to apply spiritual principles. Once I'm aware that I'm not on the spiritual being right about now, sometimes I'll tell God in the fellowship, look, I'll be right back. Because it's feeding my flesh. It is feeding my flesh, and I know it, right? And so I just thank God that, through our 3-day encounter, that last night ended in a spiritual way. Why? Because I recognized what I was doing and I let him know verbally, right? And so that's being honest because he knew I knew, I know, right? But the beauty of it is he admired my honesty, my authenticity, my transparency. Because I told him, I was like, look, I had all kinds of thoughts, right? But the reality is I'm on this spiritual path and I just recognized that, guess what? Yes, I am still human, but I'm also a human being. And I need to ask myself that one question: that when is what you thinking, what you see, what you want to do, what you want to say? Is it going to feed the flesh or the spirit? And so at the end, I got to share with him my book. I got to share with him my story. I shared with him, what I was going through, and while I was here, and the purpose of me being here, and that original thought wound up becoming spiritual, right? And this is what I mean by ulterior motives, right? Yeah, yeah. What you see here is not who I am, it's the spirit within. And so let me share with you my spirit within. And that's when I was totally authentic and transparent with the truth. And the truth will set you free. And so I didn't have as many, you heard that right, as many fantasies as I had the 2 nights before about him, right? Because I was able to take the mask off, be honest, be willing, and be open minded to know, I know what I'm doing, But how can we set ourselves free just by being transparent and authentic? Okay, I ain't got but 3 more minutes. So let me once again share with you um, um, the list of the um, 5 agreements so that you can go to the website and get the book. Called The 4 Agreements, right? But it's really 5. And so go to www.migueluiz.com and get the book, right? Um, of the 4 agreements, but there's a 5th one now. Be impeccable with your word. Don't sin against you, and you will practice not sinning against other people. Don't take anything personally. Why? Because it's that person's opinion, it's that person's reality, and we need to practice not letting it affect us because as human beings, we let everything and we take everything personally. The 3rd one, don't make any assumptions. I am so glad that I have the spirit of asking questions because I don't want to make assumptions. And when I know the answer, which may or may not be the truth, at least I was able to try to understand than to be understood. And as a result, number 4, I will always do my best. And number 5, I'm going to be skeptical, but I'm going to learn to listen to the negativity that I hear myself, just like, with this young man. You know what I mean? And of course, I found out what age he is, and I think he said he was 49. Listen, I'm 67, right? And so I was able to, be skeptical about what I was saying to myself and giving the vibes to him. And I just needed to learn to listen to that spirit that's operating through this vehicle. And I get to laugh at myself because guess what? I'm not giving anything or anybody that much power ever again, one day at a time, to not just go back to drinking, not just going back underneath that car, but to, right, um, make me go back to those attitudes, ideas, and behaviors that got me in trouble in the beginning. And I'm not going to say in trouble. It was a part of my process. It was a part of my